The next part of my talk is about Android. So basically, it's an introduction of how to do Android development. Okay. So, from the Google website, Android is defined as a software stack for mobile devices that includes an operating system, middleware, and key applications. Also, the Android SDK provides the tools and APIs necessary to begin developing applications on the Android platform using the Java programming language. So the key point from this is that Android is a software stack. It isn't an operating system. It provides the entire stack for you. Also, you get all the tools that you need to create the applications. And finally, Android uses the Java programming language. Android isn't Java, it just uses the language. Just because many people use Java already, and it's a pretty good language. So, Android is more than just an operating system. So you have the runtime environment side, where, as you already know, at its heart you have the Linux kernel, but it isn't just Linux, it's just based on it and patched up to make it more adapt for mobile applications. Then you have numerous code libraries, for example SQLite to offer database support, or OpenGL for graphics. You have multiple managers to be able to access the device's capabilities, telephony, location-based services, etc. And then you have these basic applications. It's useless to get a device with Android without any applications, because then you cannot use the device. So applications like to call or to browse the internet, you already have packaged with Android. That's from the runtime side. And then from the development tools, the main things, I guess, are the Eclipse plugin, which will help you create Android applications, and the emulator, which will help you run Android applications just as you saw before. But the main thing is Android is not just an operating system. Now, when you create an application, what are the main things that you will be working with? Well, first of all, there's the Java code, where you have all of your business logic. And this is just a screenshot from Eclipse, and it looks like developing any other Java application. A very important part of the Android application is the manifest file. Because here is where you have all of the, basically here is where you tell Android the capabilities of your application. So you tell Android what data it exposes, what intents it can process, what permissions it needs. All of this information is found in manifest. And technically the manifest is actually an XML file, but the Eclipse plugins give us an easier way to create and manage the manifest file. And the very important thing is resources. So basically, any non-code items should be externalized. And this is a practice that should be done not only in Android, but any kind of development. The only cool thing is that with Android, we get a couple of bonuses when we externalize these resources. Now, in Android, we have many resource types. Here we have just a list of few. We have drawables, which are just any images. Strings, which are basically all the strings externalized in XML files. The layout is another XML file, which is describing the structure of the view. And then we have menu, arrays, and etc. Now, as I said, with Android, we get much more when we are using resources. So we have the notion of default resources, which are used by default, and then alternate resources, which will be used in certain different situations. So for example, for localization, all you have to do is have the strings.xml with the already externalized strings, then create another one with the translation. Now this one is finished but using Google Translate, so I have no idea if they are translated well. But the cool thing is that here, from a developer point of view, all you have to do is supply this extra resource file, name it or place it in the right place, and then it's up to Android to decide which of these two resources to use, depending on the localization of the mobile. From the developer point of view, he doesn't have to do anything. But it doesn't stop there. You could also, for example, define two different layouts depending on the orientation of the phone. So in this case, you have one layout that when the mobile is in portrait, the image is on top, and when it's landscape, the image will come to the right. And again, from the developer's point of view, all you have to do is supply these multiple resources. Then it's the phone which chooses the right resource at the right time. And as time goes by, Google are actually adding more and more parameters that you could play with. So you could end up saying something, if the device is docked in the car, it is night, and the screen has a high density pixel capabilities, then please use the darker, high density images so that you don't ruin the night vision of the driver. So you can actually combine all of these possibilities together, and then it's again up to Android to decide which layout, which resource to use. So this is something which is pretty nice in my opinion. Now, what are the main building blocks of Android? I think the most important one is the activity, okay? Which is basically a single focused screen. So when a user is interacting with Android, it's actually interacting with an activity. So for example, if the user wants to make a call, he's using the call activity. Or write an email, he's using the mail activity. The crucial word here is focus. So you should have one activity for a single specific task. And because usually when we write an application does many different things, typically an application will have multiple activities. It's only very trivial applications which have just one activity. From all the activities that an application contains, there's one activity which will be the main activity, which is like the starting point of the application. Excuse me. And we would move from one activity to another using intents. So if we take a look at the application that I showed you before, we have the main activity where we get like those three icons telling us to choose either accounts, contacts, or cases. Then we have three activities which just show the list of contacts, accounts, and cases. Then we have another three activities which show the actual details. And we can move between one activity to another using intents. But the cool thing is that the same way that we can move between activities in the same application, you could move to activities which are provided by external applications. So from the contact display, if I click on the phone number, then I go to the phone activity. So this makes it very easy to move around. And also to reuse your code, but more about that later. Now, when you leave an activity, it's actually not just destroyed, but it is placed inside a stack. So you end up in a situation where you have a stack of screens or a stack of activities, one over the other. You are only seeing the one on the top. Okay? And this makes it very easy to move, for example, backwards. So you start from the main activity, we go to the contact list, contact display, and then we want to move back. And basically we use the back key, which is something which everybody is familiar with. So this again makes it very easy to move around your activities. Now, in order for this to work properly, okay, Android needs to manage our activity lifecycle. So basically, Android needs to control how these activities relate to each other, and also Android is the guy who decides when an activity is closed. And basically, it follows a number of priorities. So basically, an activity or a component with a high priority will not be discarded, of course. So for example, the activity with the highest priority will be the one which is at the foreground, which is visible, which is the one that the user is interacting with at the moment. Then we have visible, services, background, and empty processes. So first, Android will kill all the empty processes, then after that, background activities, services, and hopefully it will never happen that you have to kill the visible or the foreground. And to help us developers handle these situations, basically an activity parses to three main states. It could be active and running, paused, or stopped. And there are a number of lifecycle methods that you can override in order to put in your business logic. And in my opinion, I think the most important one is actually the on pause, because that's where you would want to save your state. Because as I said, users are impatient. They are moving from one application to another. So you don't want that a user is entering an email, suddenly a phone call comes in, he replies, and then once he goes back to the the email application, he suddenly realizes that all of the information that he typed in is lost. So in those situations, please make sure that you that your application maintains state correctly. Now, apart from activities, there are services, which are basically processes which do not have any user interfaces, and they are typically used for long-running operations. Then there are broadcast receivers, which listen for events. So, for example, if you have, I don't know, these telemarketers calling you a lot, you could actually create a broadcast receiver which will listen for when you will receive a phone call, and if this phone number is from a blacklist, then it will just drop the call, and you don't even have to pick it up. So that's the broadcast receiver, and then there are content providers. And these are the guys that will allow you to share application data across external applications. So you would use a content provider, for example, to access the contact information on the mobile phone. Or else you could create your own content provider to expose the data from your application to other applications. Because basically this content provider acts like a data layer, providing abstraction over the actual storage of the data. And Android discourages users to share data directly. You should always go through a content provider. So basically, those are the main building blocks of Android. Now, I have already mentioned slightly intent. Now we're going to go quickly through it again. Now, one thing to note is that an intent will make the UI work. And an intent is almost analogous with the statement, I want to do something. So, let's take a quick example. So we have your own activity, and the user would like to do a phone call. So the activity tells Android, hey,